Hey everybody, this here Paduke owl flute reminds me of a story I'd like to share with you. But I'll start from the beginning of how I started to make flutes. And the birth of making flutes in my life was also at the same time the birth of my involvement with Native American ceremonies, sweat lodges, Sundance, Vision Quests, a lot of the plains ceremonies that people still do today. Well, I learned how to play the flute. Oh, it was probably only 2 months prior to when I learned how to make the flute. And it was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I got my first flute. I did a trade with some crafts that I made at the time, learned how to play the flute, and I was already a little bit musically inclined, and I picked it up real quick, just with three basic pointers. Picked it up real quick and could play some nice melodies out of that within, gosh, a couple of weeks. And then we continued our traveling. I'm from New York, and I was traveling around the country, vending and going to different shows and festivals, and went from Albuquerque to Santa Fe, and we found a place to vend our wares called Trader Jack's Flea Market. It's a world-renowned um, flea market where people come from around the world to buy crafts and gemstones and things like that. And while I was there, I saw a flute maker. He was selling his flutes. Long hair, cowboy hat, sitting back, playing his flute, trying to sell some, and had a buffalo robe laying there, kind of like this guy here. Had a buffalo robe laying there, and had his 5-year-old son laying on that buffalo robe. And of course, I tried out a flute and I played it and thanked the guy and went back to my booth to keep vending. And later on, he got back in touch with me and my traveling partner at the time, Rebecca. Um, and he said, "Man, you're a real good flute player. You if you made these, you'd be able to sell them real well." He's like, I'll teach you how to make these flutes if you want." So he invited me and Rebecca back to his place in Del Norte, Colorado. It's about 3 hours north of there, and we went. Of course, the guy lived off the grid. He lived outside of the town of Del Norte, Colorado, bordering the national forest. Nothing there except his neighbor who lived literally in a hole in the ground, kind of a hermit type of guy. Little hole in the ground that he dug, put a wood door on there to keep the critters out. And John himself, he lived in a shack. I shouldn't say shack, a house that he lived in with no electricity, no running water, and outhouse outside. And he built his house from recycled materials that the locals gave him. He had uh, what people today would call a primitive way of living. And his whole family lived there. 5-year-old boy, 18-year-old girl named Jessica, his wife. And anyway, he took us there. We went over. We stayed for about a month. We set up his teepee, and Rebecca and I stayed in the teepee. And while we were there, we were learning how to make flutes. But at the same time, this guy John, his name is John Eagleheart, he was a pipe carrier for the people. Some of you may know what that is. He has the right to do Native American ceremonies. And he took me into my first sweat lodge. We did 4 sweats while I was there. And it stuck with me. I've always been a spiritual person, but that stuck with me. It had a profound impact, that experience, on my life and my consciousness, I guess I'd say. And so it was really inspiring, those first sweats. And each time after the sweat lodge, I'd go on a walk, um, and I'd find a gift on that walk. Like I said, it's bordering national forest. You could go forever out in the sagebrush and the juniper trees. And 4 gifts came to me: a rattlesnake, a pronghorn antelope came face to face with me, a pronghorn antelope horn that I found on the ground, and the last one I found was a golden eagle feather. Beautiful golden eagle feather, about yay big, and it was a plume feather, and the fluff on that thing was about 12 inches wide. And that eagle feather to me represented sort of a birth into this new life that I carry still today, and that birth was into Native American spirituality and these ceremonies, but also this flute journey that I get to share with all you guys. And so that is the birth of how I started making those flutes and simultaneously um, doing these ceremonies. And I shared that part of the story to bring you to this new inspired story that this owl flute reminded me of. So over the years, of course, my flute journey continued and expanded and went further, and hand in hand with that, the ceremonies, the sweat lodges, and the vision quests, and the sun dance, all those things evolved and kept growing into my life. And so years and years and years later, as a flute maker, I had one of my flute customers, Terry, and this woman, she's an Ojibwe woman, and she's bought several flutes off of me. And she's gifted quite a few of them, I'm sure, too, you know. And anyway, I've been going to North Dakota with my grandpa Max Defender to Sundance in the Turtle Mountains, Turtle Mountain Reservation, for many years. I think it's been 15 years now. And quite a few years back, I took my friend Matt too. Unfortunately, my friend Matt lost his son to a tragedy, his 3-year-old son, Aiden, and he started sundancing too to try to get some healing from that trauma that his family had to face. And so we were traveling back there. I can't remember, maybe it was his second year of sundancing or something like that. We were going back to that ceremony, and as we were traveling there, we were going down the road, and we ended up off the beaten path, and I think we were getting a little frustrated, like, oh man, this is going to take us longer to get to where we need to go. And but what it ended up happening is that little side shoot that we took wound us up in the Badlands in South Dakota just in time for sunset. So we decided we'll just camp there. And so we pull into Badlands National Park, and the sun was setting as soon as we got in there. And we said, man, we should take our pipes out and say some prayers and watch the sunset on this butte over here. So we went out there, we took our pipes, we sat down on this butte to watch the sunset and say our prayers and stuff. And as we did that, probably about a quarter mile away or so, there's another butte you could see. And we hear this flute playing, echoing over the canyon. Beautiful. And I got all excited, and I said, oh man, I gotta go get a flute too. So I went back to the car, and we ended up having this beautiful duet. This person playing the flute way yonder, over yonder. He'd take a turn. We'd be saying some prayers with our pipes, and then I'd take a turn and play at the same time. And it was just this really cool experience. And so after the sun had went down, we decided, go back to the car, pack up. But I thought, man, it'd be nice to meet that person. And they must have thought the same thing. So we both came and started walking toward each other. And there was 3 people over there, and then me and Matt. And we just said hello and introduced ourselves, and that was real cool, nice to meet you. And I said, hey, I'm Miguel, singing tree flutes. And it was a 15-year-old boy, a young lady, and their dad. And then they were an Ojibwe family too. And we told them, yeah, we're on our way to Sundance. And, Matt told them the story of what he was going through in his family. And I introduced myself, and I found out it was the 15-year-old boy who was playing that flute. And I was like, wow, that was great. And I said, my name's Miguel. I'm a flute maker, singing tree flutes. And this guy's eyes got all big, and his jaw kind of dropped. And I was asking him, well, what kind of flute do you play? What kind of flute do you play? And he pulls it out of his little flute case. And then I see the little owl fetish come out of there, and I knew, oh, that's my flute right there. And he told me that Terry, that Ojibwe woman, gifted him that flute, and he picked it up right away and was super inspired. And it was a real magical experience for the both of us to be able to have that connection, you know, and meet each other. And he got to meet the maker of the flute that he received as a gift. And it was just a beautiful thing. And I actually have a picture of him right here because later on he had to get a replacement fetish for it. It was either lost or I think his sister sat on it or something. So I got him a new fetish, and they sent me a picture of him, and still to this day, he's a real good flute player. So that was just a magical experience, and you know, as we left and drove away from that experience, both Matt and I were just like kind of jaw dropped and like that was really cool. And as we were driving down the street to find our camping spot, we passed this herd of buffalo, and it was just the most magical experience. It was just that sign saying you're on the right path. You're on the right path. All these things are in alignment to show you that where you're headed is the right place. You know, that's a symbolic thing, of course. And those buffalo were all there, and the big herd buffalo was standing aside, watching over everybody, and the other buffaloes, two of them were butting heads, and then one was rolling back and forth in the sand and dirt, kicking up the dust, and it's just a magical experience. So one of many beautiful stories of where this flute journey has taken me, and I just figured I'd share that with you, and you know, maybe someday we'll get to share stories together about our inspired stories of the magical synchronistic things that happen in our lives. So anyway, hey, thanks for listening. Take care.